is an acceptable use of this technology. However, only with the condition that the workers get to benefit. If the workers do not get to benefit...
Let's enjoy the ride, is I think my philosophy at this point. Because, I mean...
Okay. What he's saying is, the AI robots and whatever, or one of the things that he's been trying to talk about is, the AI robots are going to make everybody's life better because they're going to produce all this excess labor that will provide value, that will reduce the amount of labor that human beings need to do. Unfortunately, now, this is a really good video from Gary's Economics. I'm only going to play a little bit of it because it's a long video, but I highly recommend going and watching some of this. And I've explained this concept before many times, but sometimes I like to let a man speak so more people listen. Female manipulation tactics. And this is sort of the point that I'm making, which is, yes, technology can have the outcome of improving human lives, but only if the workers get to lead any of these movements. Otherwise, the people are the ones that get shafted. Like, we have more food today than human beings have ever seen in any other period of time. And yet, people still have food insecurity. Not just in the world, in the country. Our food production is, like, obscene. GMOs, obscene. We used to have famines and blights that would be so bad, countries would starve. And that's just not something that has to happen anymore. That's how much food we have, and the ability also to transport food now. That's how much food we have and how many preservatives we have to preserve this food. Like, again, no one should be hungry anymore, and people are still hungry.
So the Industrial Revolution was like a massive, massive, massive change in the way that the world works and the way it started in Britain and the way that Britain works. And it happens in the context of this enormous shift in the work that people were doing in this country. So up until the Industrial Revolution, the majority, I want to say vast majority of workers in this country and in the world were basically farmers. They're working in food production, and they're spread across the country because you need to have farmers like wherever there is land. And in a country like Britain, which has fertile land almost everywhere, you need people everywhere. Everybody's farming, different kinds of farming, and they're making food. And just before the Industrial Revolution starts, you have these laws of enclosure, the enclosure laws, which is a change in the way that farming is managed in this country. So up until then, there was a system of, there was common land, which everybody could use to graze their animals, and some laws have changed, which benefits landowners, hurts.
By the way, the difference between someone who knows what they're talking about and someone who doesn't know what they're talking about is when they introduce words without providing any context, and they don't speak in layman terms. Gary can explain concepts that I don't think are difficult, but a big reason he can explain them to people who don't have any frame of reference is because you don't need to use all these fucking big words and buzzwords and complicated sentences. You can just speak normally. You don't need to have any unnecessary jargon and be like, well, the intelligent and we still eat bananas. No, you're just talking about like, okay, and then these people had this land. And then from that land, this is how they sent it.
Ordinary people, which basically say, you can't use this common land anymore. That's owned by the landowner. And it means that suddenly a lot of farmers don't have access to land, and they have to leave their farms and they have to go to the cities. And it creates this massive pool of basically impoverished, unemployed ex-farmers who don't have any work, and they have to go to the cities. In many ways, it's a bit similar to what we've seen in some parts of deindustrializing Europe, where people, they used to live in these industrial towns. Those industrial industries have collapsed, and those people, especially young people, are forced to move to like bigger cities to get work. So we had this thing happening in the late 1700s in England, which saw all of these workers flood to the towns. And a lot of people suggest that this is one of the reasons why the Industrial Revolution happened. Because suddenly you have all of these unemployed workers, which means that you can create a massive factory. The factories that are being built during the Industrial Revolution, some of them are massive, and you can easily hire, however many people you need, 50, 100 people, because wages are incredibly low. There's a large amount of unemployed people looking for jobs, and it creates the potential basically to build these factories. In the early stages of the Industrial Revolution, I think it is pretty much unanimously accepted that people were living lives in these factories, in these cities, which were pretty hellish. So not to like romanticize the lives these guys were previously living as farmers. I'm sure they had their difficulties. We're talking about 300 years ago now, it was before I was born. But these guys are flooding into cities. They're working incredibly long days, 14-hour, 16-hour days, 6 days a week, in cities in factories which have no safety restrictions. Deaths are not uncommon. So I used to live not far from here in Bow, East London, in what used to be the biggest matchstick factory in the world. And the people who used to work there, if they worked there for too long, their jaws would like slowly start to disappear because they were working with this dangerous chemical, white phosphorus, and you couldn't stay there for too long because your jaw would disappear. And you know, that's specific to the matchstick factories, but these kinds of incredibly unsafe working environments in the factories were very common. Because of this enormous movement of people to the cities and the enormous growth in industries and factories, the cities became incredibly crowded, incredibly dirty, incredibly polluted. Disease and death were common. I wasn't around then, but I think it's pretty much generally accepted that at the very least for the first sort of, maybe 100 years of the Industrial Revolution, people were living in like pretty hellish environments. They've been moved from the kind of rural life that they would have lived for maybe thousands of years into living in incredibly crowded, dirty, polluted cities, working incredibly long days in incredibly dangerous environments. And that happens. This is not, we can look at it from the perspective and say, oh, well, in the end it worked out all right. That's like 100 years.
It's also like an oversimplification, and it's like an anti-humanist position to say, it'll work out. Don't worry. Eventually people will have better lives, and ignoring all the people who had to turmoil and suffer so that other people can live better lives.
Of people living like that. And you don't really start to see improvements in like broad living standards for ordinary people until sort of towards the end of the 1800s. But I've often told the story of my grandma, who was born in, I think, possibly 1927. So 100 years ago, next year. She's living in the early 1900s. So even then, sort of just off the back end of the Industrial Revolution, my grandma's born and raised in London, and I think 3 or 4 of her siblings died of tuberculosis, which is a disease of poverty. I think it's fair to say, even in the 1920s, you are seeing pretty extreme poverty being really pretty common for, half, if not more, majority of people, even right at the end of the Industrial Revolution. So, even 150 years later, you're still seeing really broad poverty being the norm in Britain, in London. So in the heart, the very heart, the capital city of the Industrial Revolution. So I think this idea that you look back and you say, oh, well, things work out in the end, is pretty naive, right? Because we had, 50, 100 years of hell for workers that, to be honest, doesn't really get seriously resolved. There's some questions about how the living standards seriously improving towards the end of the 1800s. But I think it's fair to say, you don't really start to see these serious living standard improvements filter through to ordinary working people until after the Second World War, which is, nearly 200 years after the Industrial Revolution starts. So I think...
And obviously, I think he mentions it in a bit, but only after how many people rioted, how many people protested, how many people died to get that.
The idea that this is just going to resolve itself, it took 200 years. Do you want, 200 years of hell? Is it worth it? So I think this rather naive assumption, which is often made by people who are benefiting from the status quo, that things are just going to resolve themselves, is not really at all borne out by history. And if we look at the periods in time when living standards...
Nice bait. Nice fucking bait. Stop. You almost got some chatters, bro. You almost got some. All robots would be nice if it significantly reduced costs and lowered prices. We should be able to have Chinese car pricing with them. This is just true. But this part, these workers are going to keep demanding more and more. They're eventually going to demand a 100K living wage. And then you scroll up. Ready for a hentai virus. I didn't see that one until just now. Huh? I just wanted to show people that he's smiling at us from below, just like bitch McConnell. Hentai virus.
Increased, and when they didn't increase. The big improvement happens after World War II. And when does that happen? When we see a really, really significant decrease in inequality. And that comes at the culmination of really like 200 years of workers' movements. And I think this is the other part of the story, which is...
So he talks about it. But again, the video is really good. Highly recommend. You guys know I plug Gary all the time. His videos are just really good. He does really good deep dives of a lot of different issues, and I appreciate it because there's a lot of times where he talks about things that I feel like are really hard to talk about on stream because it takes time and you have to trust that you know where he's gonna go somewhere good with it. And sometimes when I'm streaming, it's hard to do that. Denims chatters are so funny. Denims chatters are the funniest, okay? Like, what? Sometimes I struggle with this a little bit with streaming because I get one guide, but talking about what people's positions are is not the same as endorsing those positions. It's saying, hey, let's look at the merits of this argument and let's figure out if we agree or disagree. So like I've had this conversation before with AI where I've been like, yeah, if we only had like the actual things of if the AI or the LLMs that were being used for things that were actually productive and weren't abusing people's art or likeness or whatever, and it was just simply improving people's lives, but we didn't have like the giant water waste of people dating AI. Yeah, the theoretical on that could be good. And like, we shouldn't be modern day Luddites. And there is an appeal for an environment where technology gets easier and easier and easier, or like better and better and better, and improves all of our lives. But that is also still within the context of workers have to fight for the ability to enjoy the fruits of that labor, right? So, and I've talked about this before with like LLMs or the AI in Sony, where Sony uses or used, and hold, before you type anything, let me finish. Why is she shitting on Ludwig? Stop. You're describing what Luddites were, though. They weren't anti-technology. They were anti-exploitation. I mean, he talks about it in this video. Do you want me to play him talking about them? It's just different. It is. But anyways, let me get to the point that I'm trying to get to. Oh yeah, Sony had this AI that they used for animating certain parts of the Spider-Verse movie, where because the Spider-Verse movie, it like melds 3D characters and 3D models with 2D lines, it would input these ink lines that they trained it on and they trained it on their ink lines that they drew. So it's only being trained off of the work that Sony legally owns, and it's being used for this one very particular thing to help remove some of the mundane labor that just happens when you make animated movies. So that is an instance where I'm sorry, there are no animators that are like, oh boy, I can't wait to show up at my job and animate the same 2 lines over and over again. I think that there are probably some scenes that are more exciting to animate and they're fun to animate and there are ideas that are fun to execute. But the more mundane stuff, nobody wants to do the mundane stuff. It's the same idea behind factories. Nobody wants to sit and put 15 buttons on a shirt, right? If you had a factory and a machine that could do that immediately, amen. And so a model that's trained within the studio on only the work of the studio for one particular individual task, that's dope. I don't want to watch AI. You've totally missed my point completely. Just so you know. You've completely missed my point. I disavow this opinion. Do I have to pull up the fucking video? Sometimes I feel like I say things and the words that I said didn't matter. It's like the idea someone's like, she said she watches AI videos. I don't like that. Pull it up. All right, this again.
About the expression. Form lines to describe
Sorry, let me get a man to explain it.
like a nose. The effects team did this amazing thing where we had the character designer make a library of drawings. So that was something we could make rules for. This is the way that nose would look from this head angle to camera. And we made a whole bunch of poses that defined that. And the effects team would recreate those in 3D space with those rules of head angle to camera, and then let the machine learning program try and guess where those drawings would go, and a person would correct it every time it was wrong, making it therefore another rule. And little by little, we're teaching the computer to make drawings that we find redundant. Learn about the expression.
Okay. And now anything that's closer to that, right? I get what you're saying. It's just the AI doing the mundane, repetitive tasks, not creating the whole image or animation. Yeah. Things like that where they're removing mundane, simple things. Great. Absolutely wonderful. We can spend more of that time doing things that matter and making more amazing artwork and making more amazing stuff. Right? And I disagree. So like, this is my point. Like, I disagree with this notion that the only reason we shouldn't do something is because it eliminates jobs. it's just not a good argument to say this eliminates a job. Okay, coal mining. If we remove coal mining and switch to green energy, it removes a job. That argument is faulty. It's not a good argument. So therefore, and allow me to complete my point, I'm not going to read any chat messages until I'm finished. So if you send a chat message before this point, I'm going to ignore it or explode you with my mind. The problem, however, with removing some of these mundane tasks or improving efficiency is whether or not the workers that participate in the work get to appreciate the value that they have provided, the efficiency that they have provided, and whether or not that actually results in them having to work less and enjoy life more. And there's no point of having these improvements if people don't get to appreciate and enjoy the benefits as a result of these improvements. Workers don't add any value. Nice bait. You're banned for bait. And sometimes when I talk about these things, right, which had happened even today in stream, I really appreciate the Gary's Economics videos because they do something that I really appreciate in videos, in content, whenever people are talking about certain ideas, where you're not immediately dismissing an idea just off the basis of the idea. You're building the argument on why all of these things are actually incorrect instead of just like, it removes jobs. It's like, that's literally the chud argument. That's the chud argument. That's it. You sound like a chud, dude. I thought we didn't like when chud said that. Why the fuck are we doing that? Stop. That's cringe. That's cringe. Why can't we just have a world where like animators don't have to do crunch anymore, or like game developers aren't doing crunch, but they're still getting paid the same amount for less manual work? That's a much better. Why can't we perceive that world? That's the world I want to perceive instead of they took our jobs. It's like, what is this reactionary response? No, these are bad ideas and we can tackle these ideas without engaging in stupid fucking chud arguments. So that's the point that I'm making. And he does a really good job. He talks about all of this in the video. He's like, a lot of economists will go back and forth on whether or not AI decreases wages or AI increases wages. And here are these arguments here, and here are these arguments here, and this is why this. But then he brings in some of the real world and what would functionally happen. So it's a really good video. It talks about it, but I wanted to show that for one brief moment. The goal should be to remove mundane work that produces little to nothing or no benefit to humanity, while creating new work that has positive impact on humanity. And I wouldn't even call it work, but value to society, whether it's in the form of creative work and creative projects. For example, in the case of the studio that I pulled up, or in the case of more free time. For example, in the case of that studio, wouldn't it be dope if that had shred 10 hours of work every week for the average worker? And they, instead of having to show up for another 10 hours that week, they could stay home for the same pay and work a 4-hour work week instead. And I'm not saying one of these has to happen for the other one to happen. I'm saying when we look at improvements to technology that actually just completely automate or mostly automate mundane labor, we should try and perceive it in this glass half full lens instead of with some skepticism, instead of immediately they took our jobs. Right? That is not going to happen for sure, but that never happens. You violated the rule twice now. I don't want to watch AI. Okay. You literally, by the way, you misunderstood what I said. And then when I explained it, you didn't apologize because you're a sack of shit and you're annoying, and fuck you and you're banned. Never type in here again. You are the type of chatter I was talking about, that you guys just you exist to annoy me. You exist explicitly only to annoy me. You assume what the stance is of whatever streamer's talking, and then it's I'm the smartest person. Fuck you, dude. Fuck you. Did you not read the rules? Illiterate piece of shit. Read the rules. Don't be annoying. You are annoying. Banned. Anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone else? I'm serious about it. But yeah, I think it's good to have the skepticism and say, well, we need to make sure that we fight for the rights so that these animators who are contributing to working on this LLM that saves all of this time, they should be compensated. They should absolutely be compensated for that, and they should get more time off. Right? And instead of saying, no, we must reject this technology, we should instead say, okay, this is an acceptable use of this technology. However, only with the condition that the workers get to benefit. If the workers do not get to benefit, fuck you. I feel like that's a much better way to like frame a lot of these discussions. And sometimes it frustrates me when I see leftists see certain things and then they engage in chud arguments where it's like, our jobs. It's like, come on, guys, we can do better. We can refocus the conversation. So, yeah. Okay, so another chatter wants to go. I see. No, but there won't be more time off. There won't be shorter work weeks. Capitalism just funnels it to the top 1%. Did you miss everything that I just said? I said that's why we would fight for it instead of rejecting the technology. I guess. Okay, banned. Anyone else? I've gone mad with power. No, not you. Sorry, chatter. G-Fin, you're great. You're great. Sorry. I feel like you understood what I was trying to say and totally valid. I was talking about a different chatter. Didn't you say you avoid arguing? I did. I have been. People have been getting banned. So I have been, actually. I've also seen a lot of other people talking about whether or not something is an LLM or an AI. And I'm saying that, like, we don't have to talk these are larger ideas. Even if you're saying, and even if you want to make the argument, well, that specifically is not an AI. It's a learning machine. So it's not even an AI. So you can't even describe it as an AI. I'm saying, even on the topic of AI, I think we should be able to rationally discuss these things and say, yeah, this is a fucking, I'm sorry, you want to generate 15 photos of a woman in a bikini? No. That is a fucking, what is the benefit to society? Let's see the cost. The cost is all of our water. Okay. And the benefit is, what exactly? No, I don't think so. No. Yeah. Oh, you want to build a learning machine that can help you cut down on some of this mundane work, and then you want to demand rights for the people that, worked on it. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't see. Okay. That seems pretty reasonable. All right. Great. Clean water for AI porn is crazy. I know, right? Caught. I don't want to ban, but could you shake me with love? Yes. All right. Anything else? Is that it? I think that was it. I think that was all I wanted to say on that. Yeah, but all of that was to say, the problem with talking about AI, or the problem with talking about any technology and ignoring the real ramifications of that technology being used to just destroy people's actual lives, it just pisses me off. Because I'm not anti-technology, and I will never be anti-technology, and I will never be against technology that improves people's lives and removes mundane labor that provides no joy. My opinion about labor is exactly the opinion about Marie Kondo that Marie Kondo has about cleaning, which is, does it spark joy? And I think there are a lot of things that spark joy in every single field that people work in, because a lot of it has to do with the joy of having created something you worked hard on. I know people who program who hate programming, and I know people who program who are like, no, it feels really good when you have like this idea of something that should work and you actually execute it and it fucking works. It's great. It's like there's a high to it that's not comparable to like other things, and I really enjoy it. And I'm like, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you. And I think it's like that for a lot of things. But if the work does not spark joy, of course I'm for automation, right? Like, I don't think it sparks joy to have people work in the hot sun for like acres and acres and acres picking radishes. If we could automate that, I would absolutely want that. That's not labor that sparks joy. Mundane, repetitive labor that just breaks your back is not exactly joy-sparking labor, right? However, I also understand people's like frustration with AI or because I fucking hate it, but I also understand people's frustration with like any technology because they know that it's going to be used as to create an even larger disparity between the richest and the poorest. But I want to imagine a world where that is not the case. And I don't want to imagine a world where anytime that there is any technology, the immediate argument is always our jobs. I want to imagine a world where we see that and we demand even more. I want to imagine a world like France where they fucking start lighting things on fire because they want one more week off of work that year. They're like 60 weeks off. Sorry, there's only 52 weeks in a year. Sorry, let me reel it back just a little. We only have 30 weeks off in the year. We want it to be 40 weeks off in the year. And then they just start burning down half the city. It's like, low key pop off, dude. Yes. Yes. Amen. And like, we have so much. I just can't, I cannot on principle be anti-technology that provides value. And this is the same idea here, right? Like, it's just frustrating to see like someone like Elon be like, AI is so amazing and it's going to be the best in the world ever. Sorry. I was looking at my phone for a moment. All right. Okay, but do I still steal the copper and assorted valuable minerals from the AI data center? Or no, somebody else who isn't you in Black Block should do that. Because you would never do that. And you would never, ever admit to a crime. Because we're all people that never commit crimes. So that was just to say, fucking makes me mad where it's like, no, AI is going to make all of our lives wonderful. It's going to be so amazing. Oh. Fuck you. Stupid, ugly piece of shit. I fucking hate him. I hate him. Bad built, butch body, whatever the fuck. Hate him. I wonder, is it that everybody hates Elon Musk because everyone is just so mean? Or do they hate Elon Musk because he fucking sucks? One thing people don't realize is that you can run a functional AI bot on your PC with local graphics card and it works pretty well. It's just a slow typer. I just don't know enough about what that would even look like. I know for a fact that, I'm sorry, like the insane water usage for people to talk to a bot is like deranged to me. I'm sorry, I'm totally pro-China on this one, to be very clear. We should not have AI that you can date. I'm sorry, visual novels exist. Okay? Grow up. No, I want to talk to my bot. Grow up, okay? Go on Valorant and find love like everybody else does. Bitch. All right? Unbelievable. People are just so lazy nowadays. Go on Valorant and talk about what your favorite pretty princess is, and I promise you'll find someone within 5 minutes, okay? Valorant is literally just like speed dating for people who go on the internet, all right? Get this mega data center they want to put next to my fucking house uses 2 million gallons of water a day. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. That's good. Valorant is key, really? Yeah. Do you have to be good at Valorant? Not really, no. I think it helps, but I compare it to looks maxing, being good at Valorant. It helps, but, you know, your personality is what's actually going to carry you.